The population is just growing too fast, and we as a country, let alone a city, is not planning accordingly. We have a huge problem in this nation with how fast our population is growing, and it's a very, very big reason why housing affordability crisis can essentially tear us apart in the future, because there's the haves and the have-nots. It's also because of this reason why a lot of investors are still betting on the fact that Southern Ontario real estate is going to continue appreciating in price and capitalize on the fact that we're not planning accordingly with the amount of people coming in. So whether right or wrong, I just want to show you how bad it's gone in the last 20 years in regards to the population. So make sure you stay tuned. Look, I know it's kind of like a little bit of a moral hazard talking about population problems in our country and specifically in Ontario, and then talking about, helping clients buy, sell real estate. But it's a huge problem that I don't think it's going to get solved anytime soon. And even though we are headed in like the right direction, it's going to take quite some time. So you either get into the market or have it potentially outpace you and, obviously tread carefully. But given the trends I'm about to show you, it could, very much be a bit of a shocking revelation of where prices may end up, right? So if you do want to make a move in the real estate market, whether you're buying, selling, or investing, you can book a strategy call with me using the link that's on the screen. It's right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com. Simply click on the date and a time that works best for you. And then when you see the prompt, fill in your name, email, mobile phone number, and the question you have for me, and then we'll chat then. Good day, Toronto. Welcome to another episode of Prime Properties TV. My name is Zen, and I run and operate a RE/MAX in the Greater Toronto Area, on top of making awesome educational real estate content just like this one for you. And if you find any of these helpful regarding the real estate topics I'm covering right now helpful to your journey, whether you're buying, selling, or investing, or honestly just curious about the real estate market, make sure you spread the knowledge by smashing the like button and subscribing to the Prime Props channel. It'd be very, very much appreciated. It would definitely help get the information out there so that people know what the heck is going on with the real estate market. And specifically in this video, what the heck is going on with the population. So this population conundrum, let me call it that, right? We have is honestly like really, really, really bad, right? So I'm going to show you this chart over here to kind of illustrate you to the scale and the magnitude of how bad the problem is right now. So this, in your case that you're seeing in front of you, is the Ontario numbers, and on the y-axis, so the up and down one, is lined with numbers from like 1 to whatever, right? And on the right-hand side, it has a bar graph of all the completed homes from last year in Q2 to this year in Q2, right? Now, if you look at the population growth, it's completely monstrous compared to the little small things down there for number of homes completed in the last year. So that is how bad the housing problem is right now. We're not building enough homes, which means prices for homes are going to go up, which means rents are going to go up. And to give you some more perspective on this, I did the math in this chart for you to show you how bad it is. If we had a population growth in Ontario in the last year of 505,000, give or take, and we had about 72,000 homes that finish, that means each home needs to fit about 7 people to be balanced. Now, honestly, think about it, that's really not happening unless you're in a multi-generational like detached home that's like, 3,000 square feet or 2,500 plus, let alone of the homes that are finished, 33,000 or almost half of them are actually apartment buildings that are likely going to be smaller condos for 1 or 2 people, not going to be fitting 7 people. The math just doesn't add up. And this is just 1 year. Doesn't, right? Look, I've said this before in the past and I'll say it again. I am personally a product of immigration in like the early 90s, but this level of immigration doesn't make any sense without the proper planning. It's straining every single type of infrastructure we have, and it causes crazy stories that everyone is hearing about how people are renting single beds in a bedroom shared with people, right? Just think about that. And I just wish like the government's left hand would talk to the government's right hand, because they're not right now. And look, don't get me wrong. I know why the government is doing this, because a massive population growth basically covers and papers over the crappy GDP numbers that we're getting in this country. But we're getting to the point where this immigration is a little bit ridiculous relative to the planning we have. Now, this chart over here shows you the history of our housing crisis since 2000. And it really wasn't always like this right now, but obviously years of accumulated lack of completions in Ontario have kind of exacerbated the problem, right? And it's just that much worse in the last 2-3 years. You can see on this chart over here, starting in 2000, 2000 teens or so, the blue line population was kind of following along the orange lines with the housing completions. A little bit of a gap there, meaning we're still not building enough, but not quite as bad. Although it didn't line up, I would still say we still had a supply problem, but it didn't get any worse. That's the key thing, didn't get any worse. Then you look at the start of 2017 and the blue lines and the orange start to separate. Look, not to get all political, but there's one observation I want to make. Because when the Liberals who are currently in power right now came into power, they ramped up immigration around 2016 to 2017. It's not a coincidence that we have more population than housing completions. It's not, right? And it looks like right now, the blue is just skyrocketing upwards with how many people we're letting into the country, while we are still not building enough homes at the pace we need it to. Again, the math just doesn't add up, right? Now, if you look at the non-permanent resident emissions for this year, it's silly. It is silly. The numbers ending in April is already surpassed 500,000. Makes no sense, right? So these non-permanent residents may not buy, but they still need to be housed via renting, right? Hence all the bedrooms and stuff being rented out just alone, meaning rents are likely going to go up. And now a lot of these non-permanent residents, such as refugees and students, and the colleges and universities are super guilty of this because they don't house these students. And you also mix in your temp workers. They may not necessarily stay, right? But of the three, I would say students and refugee, they're on that path of likely converting into a permanent resident in Canada. So they're likely to be permanent residents and fixtures in the country, and we need to house them. And here's where all of the silly part becomes ridiculous even more. Because the cost to build has inflated so much since the pandemic, inflation, and the market now is frozen because of the surprise rate hike in June. The incentives for the builders, meaning the private sector, to build is so low right now because the projects they have in the pipeline or planning to do don't even pencil, meaning they don't even make money, let alone turn a profit. They're just losing money. It'll be a charitable donation, right? So keep in mind, the government has barely built anything the last 2 decades either, so nothing's going to be built. This is why the number of housing starts has dropped in the last quarter significantly, which means it'll be a problem for future us, not current us, future us in the future, right? And for freehold properties, that's a 2 to 3 year problem. For condos, it's probably a 5 to 7 year problem, right? Same thing when you look at this chart right here that talks about permits and the value of them, meaning how much of them are in the pipeline. It's almost dropped to the pandemic lows. And frankly, I would not be surprised if it goes even lower, given that we have, a looming recession coming ahead of us at some way, shape, or form in like Q3, Q4, or Q1 of next year, potentially, right? The same problem. No permits means no planning for the future properties that we need, which means we're going to have a simple supply crunch in the future that's going to be worse than what it is right now. This is why I have always been bullish on real estate prices, because the population growth that we have, that our government lets in, makes no sense to how quickly we can build the homes to shelter the new people coming into the country. And while I do agree we are heading in the right direction, the right path, it is way too difficult to turn this massive problem around in a year or two, probably a decade or two by my guess, given how ridiculous the things are at my level of knowledge. And between now and a decade or two, I will not be surprised if prices are going to continue increasing, right? So this is something for you to consider if you are contemplating buying or investing in the current market right now, or frankly, just somewhere in the future. Look, do not get me conflated, or do not get me wrong. I don't think prices are going to be increasing anytime soon. I said last month that May 2023 prices would very much likely be the peak for 2023 because it's quite normal. And I think I'm going to be right, given that we just had a surprise rate hike and the market just froze in the last 2 weeks. Offers are failing, right? People aren't buying. So if you look at this chart over here, we're seeing that the resale, meaning existing inventory, is increasing. It's not like a huge amount, but it's definitely increasing in a meaningful way because new listings are not selling and they're just piling up. And offer dates, like I said earlier, were failing, and buyers are very much on the sideline given the surprise rate hike we got last month, and potentially another one in 2 weeks or so, right? But you know what isn't going up in this chart? Rentals, right? Rental properties, just like clockwork, every single year, almost for like the last 10 years minus the pandemic, the seasonal bump is coming. The rental market is about to kick it into high gear. So while the long-term trajectory is looking incredibly dire given no housing starts, no permits, and we're letting too many people in, affordability is not going to get better. But the short term is looking opportunistic for smart buyers to capitalize if they know and see the long-term trends. But it doesn't solve the problem that we're still bringing too many people relative to the pace at which we can house them and build these homes to house them, right? And even if we allow for more properties to be planned, meaning we increase the permits, and then we have potentially some housing starts, we don't necessarily have the workforce, the labor, or the capacity to build more and increase the output to hit our $1.5 million home target that we have, because we can barely even hit what we're normally hitting. This is why in 5 to 10 years, I can see rapid price growth at some way, shape, or form because of the volatility of lack of supply. But within that period before that ramp up or bull market, whatever you want to call it, there's going to be volatility due to rates. Happens all the time. This has always been my perspective from a macro perspective, and it hasn't changed for 7+ years despite some ups and downs. So 2017, 2018, 2020, and right now, it seems normal to me to see this volatility. But the long-term direction is we have a lack of supply. Whether it's something you subscribe to or not, you just got to look at this data and believe for yourself. There is some urgency if you are looking for that home for you and your family, or if you're investing in the future for you and your family and your kids to make sure that they're still in the city that you're currently living in without having them to go outside of it because of affordability. And if you do want to plan out how to make that move about buying or investing in the right property, you could book a call with me using the link that's on the screen right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com. Hopefully this gives you an idea of like the larger macro problem I see in the Southern Ontario and frankly Canada as a whole. But this isn't, stop the volatility that we see in the short term. It's just you have to understand the short term and the long term so you could make plans for the long term. Anyways, I hope this helps. Until next time, your move, your future. See ya. Now that I'm done watching this video, I think you should check out this video. And you know what? Why don't you check out this video too?